Hello, friends. There's a rich Hebraic background behind the bread of life, Yeshua Hamassiah, Jesus the Messiah, and breaking bread together, the Last Supper, communion, and forgiveness. It was prophesied that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem in Micah 5:2. Bethlehem in Hebrew is Beit Lechem, meaning house of bread. And Jesus was born there, fulfilling a prophecy that, as the Bible had said. The Hebrew faith assigned numbers to letters, and those numbers represent something. Beit Lechem adds up to 490, a value connected to forgiveness. Peter asked Jesus, "How many times should I forgive?" in Matthew 18:22. 7 times? He thought he was being spiritual because 7 represents the number of completion. But Jesus replied 70 times 7, or 490. Why? Because 490 has the numerical value of the Hebrew word tamim, which means perfect. The law commanded that we be perfect. Wow. Jesus said that he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. But how? Not by judging, at least until he comes again. But let's explore this further. Jesus made a startling statement in Matthew 7:1. "Judge not, lest you also be judged." Judging others with our grudges and resentments. The state of condemnation was about falling short, keeping the law, thus condemnation. Paul expressed a tormented soul in the state of condemnation in Romans 7:27, the wretched man verse, if you recall. But verses 8-1 say, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." In John 6:35, Jesus says, "I am the bread of life." He's from the house of bread, declaring that he is that bread. But it is a particular kind of bread, the bread of life. We cannot live without it. And it would seem, to stretch a metaphor, that we cannot digest his life without forgiveness, because it is because of his forgiveness that we have life. The more abundant life he describes in John 10:10. There's something about holding on to a grudge that brings condemnation upon ourselves. It's downright unhealthy, and there has been scientific research that provides evidence of that. It disrupts the digestion, inflames the body, advances arthritis, raises the pH levels, promoting cancer. When we judge, we are bringing condemnation onto ourselves, the exact opposite of what Jesus came to do. We see Paul explaining this in 1 Corinthians 11:24-37. He says that to take communion without properly discerning the body, the bread broken for you, that we are eating and drinking judgment to ourselves. Now, this is not a preclusion to taking communion, but an invitation to make it right, so as not to open the door to satanic forces to bring condemnation on us that often leads to physical manifestations like poor health and interrupted prosperity or unanswered prayers. It's hard to flow in the faithfulness of God when we stubbornly hold on to our grudges, guilts, and resentments. The Lord showed me that I might have a right to feel that way, but my rights are killing me. Does that mean that if I forgive that I let those people do it again and again and again? No. Paul addresses that earlier in the same chapter when he tells us that we're not to have quote, fellowship with people who are habitually, perhaps addicted, partakers in certain sins that are particularly harmful to us. That word for fellowship in the original Greek is koinonia, meaning intimate Christian fellowship. It doesn't mean not to associate at all, just to keep boundaries with them, particularly in the areas of trust and deep spiritual connection. For goodness sake, don't marry one. Missionary dating rarely works. It usually goes the other way. I know that the hard way. So don't avoid taking communion, people. That's a satanic lie that will keep you in health stealing, wealth robbing, spiritual growth stunting condemnation. No, Jesus said, take communion often in remembrance of me, my purpose, what I came to do. Seize it as an opportunity to make things right, as in righteousness. Take a moment to do a quick inventory of the guilts and resentments and confess them to the bread of life himself, the one who gives forgiveness and gives life everlasting. Let him cleanse you and take communion as often as you need to get that gunk out and keep it out, because the devil doesn't believe you will. He thinks you're as stupid as he is. So every time that stinking thinking comes on you, do your own communion right then and there. You know what communion means. It's that koinonia we were talking about earlier. But this time we're not talking about with other people, but we're talking about with the bread of life himself.